It's also kind of beautiful because sometimes I will be speaking directly to the authors. Obviously, I don't know who they're seeing in their minds, but then they'll see it and they'll be like, this is it. You captured her perfectly. That's exactly who she is. And I'm just like, excellent.
Welcome to Vibin With, the podcast where we learn the artistic journey and musical inspiration behind your favorite puzzle color puzzle. Today we're vibing with Laylie Frazier. Laylie is a digital illustrator from Houston, Texas. She began drawing when she was 10 years old and has been drawing ever since. She combines texture, color, and pattern to create warm and expressive portraits, pulling in inspiration from nature, utilizing abstract plants, mountains, and sun motifs in her backgrounds, as we see in her piece, Harvest.
Hello, Laylie. Welcome to Vibin With. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. So you are the amazing artist behind Harvest, which we absolutely love. It's a beautiful 500-piece puzzle. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into art? Give us a little background on you.
I started making art when I was probably about 10 years old. In 5th grade, my sister had to get spine surgery, and while she was there, she was just up late at night in the hospital watching Adult Swim, and this show called Inuyasha would come on. So then when she came back, she's like, I've been seeing this amazing show. I need to show it to you guys. And she introduced us to Inuyasha, which is, like an anime. And so we started getting the books from Borders. They existed back then. We'd go to the bookstore and just get all of this manga. We just started collecting it basically. And at some point I looked in it and I was like, I feel like I could draw this. I'm not sure, but I just have a hunch that maybe I could draw this. And that's how I started drawing. I looked at the pages of Inuyasha and I was like, I can do this. This is, that person's head's just upside down pentagon. I can figure this out. And yeah, that's what gave me my start and had for a long time a lot of influence on my art style, and I've been drawing ever since then.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely got into drawing the same way, just watching, I guess, from comic books and anime. And so I stopped. I stopped around 8th grade. I stopped drawing as much, got to more other sports and just other things. And I got back into art in 10th grade. And now I do design, the graphics for the company and stuff like that. So, well, yeah, that's super cool. So, do you have a couple questions about the anime stuff? Because I like the anime too. So, do you have a favorite anime that you watch now or grew up watching?
Inuyasha is my all-time favorite, just because it does hold that special role for me of having been what got me into art to begin with. But apart from that, when I describe my tastes, I say I'm really a sucker for a crybaby main character. What? So Devilman Crybaby, Tokyo Ghoul, Attack on Titan, those are my things.
Gotcha.
And I know nothing about anime, but I'm not obsessed. And so I literally will be like, what are you doing? He's on his computer watching something. But the only thing I've ever seen is Demon Slayer, and of course Dragon Ball Z. My daughter likes Pokemon and she's 2, and I'm like, this is nuts that she's into this stuff now, but not. But yeah, William actually used to draw Dragon Ball Z characters and all that kind of stuff. My mom projected them onto the wall and made his drawings big, and he had characters all over the room. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, so I painted them, which I didn't like as much because painting is different than drawing. So for me, it was either I drew it. But I definitely did that for our wall. Definitely all the anime you mentioned. My favorite all-time anime is Yu Hakusho. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, that was classic.
Yeah. And is it sub or dub? Do you have a preference?
Okay, if I had a choice, I would go with sub because it normally sounds better. Lines don't sound quite as cringy, but I'm normally trying to multitask. Yeah, so I'll be trying to work on a drawing or something, and I need to be able to just listen to the dialogue and have a general idea. I can't just be looking back and forth trying to read the subtitles. So like my actual preference is subs, but in reality, I'm gonna go for the dubs every time.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I've never gotten into anime, because I'm like, I don't have time to the TV while I'm also doing other stuff. You know, like I'm like you have to actually sit and watch it. You know, like no, I don't have time for this. Like the only reason why I even watch Demon Slayer is like this one's already been translated for us. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of the time, if it's something that I'm like really, really interested in, but it's kind of like long, I'll just read it instead. I'm like, I cannot dedicate the days and weeks that it takes to watch a whole series. But if I'm going to read it, you know, I can skip some pages. And so that's normally what I'll actually do is I'll read the manga. And then if it's something short and I can multitask, then I'll watch the anime.
Well, yeah, William does part of the team that helps put on this conference called DreamCon, which is like anime conference that's in Arlington. I don't know.
It's gonna be in Austin now.
Yeah. Oh,
So yeah, so you should come out.
yeah.
I was asking, do you do any vending for events or for conventions or anything like that with your work?
I've never vended at them, but I've wanted to get into it. I had a friend in college who would always sell at a bunch of different cons around Texas, one of the main ones being A-Con. So that was the one time I went to like the Dallas area.
Last year.
So I've always been kind of interested in it, but it's a little tricky because, you know, they definitely prefer artists who are doing like fan art. It's a little harder to sell original art there, but fingers crossed, maybe soon. Everything kind of had a wrench thrown in it with COVID. And now they're slowly starting up again. And now that I'm seeing people going to them again, there's like a little twinkle in the back of my brain, like, oh, maybe I could go sell it one. You know, that's coming back to me as well.
You should definitely try. Kawan's another artist of ours. She goes to DreamCon and other conventions as well. And she does original art but she also does the fan art as well. So with that, so do you do any like manga style art at all? Or like any just fan art at all?
No, I don't, which is kind of interesting because it's like, oh, this is how I got started. But I really feel like you really have to practice that art style to be good at it. And I think people assume maybe that since that's how I started and that I developed my style from that like maybe I can go back and do it. And I've tried and I just can't.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that needs its own time and dedication to, you know, honing that specific skill. And somewhere along the way, I lost it. So I don't do that art style anymore. I wish I could. Sometimes I do go back and I have days where I'm like, well, I can do it. If I focus my mind and my heart, like, I can do this art style. But it's just not something that comes naturally to me anymore.
So what would you describe as your art style now?
I would describe my art style now as semi-realism, because I'm mostly aiming for realism, but again, with my background being from highly stylized art, there's like parts of that I 100% hold on to. You know, I do still want the eyes to be a little bigger than they would be in real life. You know, I want the lashes to be like 3 long triangles sticking out. There's all those little things. So I don't really describe my art style. Even when I'm trying, like I have a photo reference right next to what I'm working on and I'm trying to make it very, very realistic, I still describe what I do as semi-realism, because at the end of the day, when I go and add like all of those finishing touches, I'm going to add in things that, you know, would not really make sense in real life, and maybe take it a little bit back towards being stylized.
So tell us about the inspiration behind Harvest. Like, who is that girl? Is that you? Is that somebody you've seen? Or
I have no clue who that is. My art, in most of my art, I have no idea, you know, who it is. I have multiple references that I'm pulling pulling from for each piece and kind of mashing them together. But then at the same time, I'm very much like, well, if it doesn't look just like the reference, that's fine. Like, I'm making a completely separate thing. So I have the references, but then I'm also going off on my own little adventure. And with Harvest, that was part, like the early lead-in to me doing a series of just like African-American people with kind of like a Western, Southern twist to it. You know, I think that in my experience, at least when I hear people talk about, you know, like being more in touch with nature, kind of outside of city society, in my family, it's always described negatively as like, oh, they're really country. And like my family's from the middle of Louisiana, like swamps galore, definitely country, and yet it's always described kind of with a negative connotation. So at the time when I was drawing Harvest, I really just wanted to draw, you know, African-American people kind of embracing that and being able to like peacefully enjoy nature. I don't know. I feel like you don't see that. Well, I think you see it more now, but at the time I was definitely like, how come you don't see like drawings and art of Black people just, you know, frolicking and laying in the grass and all of those kinds of things. And that found inspiration behind that.
I love that. Like, well, you know, and being you're in Houston now, I went to school there. My dad's from there, or our dad is from there. And so we got family, you know, still there. My grandparents actually lived, well, for as long as when we were growing up, they lived in Prairie View, which is country town. And so, you know, we grew up with like that. It's so funny because like Houston is a big city, but it's still kind of like a juxtaposition. Like I noticed like my dad is like a country accent. Like people like my cousins that like grew up there, I'm like, how is your accent so country and you're from like a city, you know? And you'll see people riding around in horses in the city, you know? So it's very, you know, you'll see like that mix of like the field and you know, that lifestyle as well as the city too. So it's really cool to see it represented, you know, as somebody who like, you know, like we grew up with our grandparents, you know, in Prairie View had like, you know, a lot of land and chickens, which I am to this day terrified of chickens because I went out there to go get eggs and I was like, this is terrible. It was horrible. But but it's really cool to see. And like, you know, I love to see the land. Like, you know, used to love going out there like when we were kids. Like that was like a week every summer we'd be out in the country and
I definitely know what you're talking about and appreciate it the same way. And then like, especially with Houston, because again, it's like this huge city, but then even not really like in the inner loop, but in the outer loop at least, you'll have these little rural pockets where over here is just like strips of businesses. And then over here, right next to it, because there's no zoning laws, there's a bit of horses and some sheep. Yep. And so, yeah, definitely, even when I've been living like in Houston, I feel like that's always been around, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. When you mentioned like, want to show like representation in your art and it's like said peacefulness and this, you know, I guess for lack of black joy. And so that's kind of why we started our company as well. Because like some of the these people wanted to have art that was really just fun and just enjoy and not like so serious, you know, showing the despair, the things that we go through, but also, you know, the joy, the fun that we have as well. So I mean, that's really simple why we have your art as one of our pieces.
How are you currently out there? I know you have an agent that you're working with. Like, what kind of is your combination of like, you know, commercial, like custom art? Like, what is your kind of makeup of clients?
Right now, I mostly do commercial art. So for the past year, a little bit over a year, I've been working with an illustration agency, and they help me find jobs in publishing, which I really, really love. It's a fun industry to be a part of. It's really respectful of artists, and it's not as stressful, I think. You don't have to wear as many hats. That's the better way for me to explain it, as when I was on my own, just trying to promote myself. I do still, make my own personal art as well. And I put that on social media and people are able to buy it directly from me. But the bulk of my work now is doing commercial work in the publishing industry.
That is so cool. I have a 2-year-old now and a baby on the way. And that's one thing that I've really fully started to appreciate. And I know my mom growing up, like she always wanted to make sure we got art, got books and all those things that really representative. So like I have so many books through it that have been passed down from when I was a baby to my daughter that I'm like, look at all these cute books. And I'm seeing more illustrations that of course, as you grow up and you stop seeing, there's not as much art and, or not as many pictures in your books anymore. But it's so cool because I had a couple of books where they were written by completely different authors, but had the same illustrator. I was like, oh, this art is familiar to me. And then I realized I have another book with the same illustrator. So that's always something that I'm really starting to appreciate even more. Again, now that I'm reading books with pictures in them.
Yeah, I mostly do book covers. So I think that's a little bit more universal.
Absolutely.
I'm working on one actual picture book, like for children's, or for children, and that's the only one I've worked on. But mostly I do book covers, which has been really, really cool. It's very rewarding, I think, now more than ever, because I grew up reading a lot of books. Like I stayed in Borders, I stayed in my school library, just picking them by the cover every time. I know everyone says don't do that, but I was doing it all the time, and I still got it.
Yeah,
and I stand by it.
Yeah,
but it's so cool now because I'll go into a bookstore and just walk around and look at the teen and young adult section, because that's mostly the subsect of the industry that I work in. And more than ever, you'll see such a huge amount of representation of different cultures. Because I know when I was a teenager and I was looking through like fantasy young adult, I didn't see that at all. And it's really, really cool that is definitely the norm now. Like you walk in that section and you'll see so many novels with like young African-American protagonists that I love that for the youth of today. And it's really cool that I get to contribute to it and that I get to, like work directly in the industry and draw those visual representations that, teens today will look at on the shelf and they'll be like, hey, that looks kind of like me. Like, let's go, let's get this one. So yeah, that's been a really fun and rewarding path that my career has gone down.
Well, that's even, I was going to say, like illustration books the children's books are a lot. That's fun for an artist because you get to draw the journey. But like, I feel like it's even more pressure to be a cover because it's like, you have to cover the whole journey in one piece like that. How do you even go about doing that? Like, do you actually read the books? Do they give you kind of a summary and you do it that way? How does that work?
It is a lot of pressure. A lot goes into a book cover. I never would have guessed before I started doing them. But I get the manuscript before it's released. Sometimes it's like full of edits. I'm seeing all the typos and everything. Like that's how raw of a manuscript they'll give me. And then I'll read it. Actually, I put it in a text to speech so I can multitask. Always try to do two things at once. And so I'll listen to the whole thing just because it does give you a much better basis of how to come up with like a good cover for the book. Because when I first started, I wouldn't read it. They would give me the manuscript and I'd be like, who's got time for that? I'm not supposed to do that. But they also give you a summary and they describe all the characters. And so I was like, well, that seems good enough to me. And the difference that I experienced when I actually started reading the whole book, as well as the summary and the character descriptions, it was like night and day. My covers, they probably don't look that different, like you wouldn't be able to tell. But the process for me of creating a good cover and having the team accept it goes so much smoother. You know, there's a lot less back and forth. When I've read the book, I'm able to come up with, you know, thumbnail ideas that wrap it up and, you know, hint at the little things they want to hint at, and all of those kinds of things are a lot easier now if you've started reading the whole book. So yeah, if anyone's getting into the industry, don't be like me. Read them from the beginning.
That's what
they're there for.
So how do you feel, like, how would you tell some advice about getting into the industry like that? Did you seek out your agency, or did they seek you out, things like that?
I ended up with my agency through just, I won't say a stroke of luck. It wasn't really luck. On Twitter, there's a event. I think it happens multiple times a year. It's called Portfolio Day. And artists will just post some of their art and they'll put hashtag Portfolio Day and they'll leave like their email and maybe like their website. So one of the Portfolio Days, I logged on, I saw everyone was doing that, so I did it myself. And that was that. I think my post, because I'm not active on Twitter at all, so I think my post got like 7 likes total. And I was like, oh, well, I tried, I don't know. And then I got a DM from my agent. And so I like to tell other artists this story because it's like, especially now, you know, the age of social media, I feel like there's so much pressure and you feel like you have to have your work get out there to so many people. And when that story, it's like, no, only 7 people probably looked at it, but one of them was the right person. Yeah. So I think that, you know, it's definitely worth it to do events like that. You know, there's a lot of visibility events, especially on Twitter, because there's Portfolio Day, there's Drawing While Black that happens every year, Visible Women. So I definitely encourage artists to participate in those because there are working professionals who are just clicking on the hashtag and just scrolling through looking for talent. And I never would have known. But if someone had told me, I probably would have started doing all of those events a lot sooner, you know. So yeah, that was really cool. I think people sometimes think the concept of like being discovered means you have to have your work like in so many different places before that's even an option. And sometimes it's just having it in, or not sometimes, a lot of the times, it's just having it in the place that people are looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah. Look, a lot of our artists we find because we follow different hashtags on Instagram and like something will just pop up and it's like, hey, what is this? Let's go to that person's page and look at some more. So absolutely. I mean, you know, we're just a small company, but you know, that is how you find people. So it's really cool to hear your story. Great example.
Yeah, I definitely think we found it the same way, just looking through other hashtags or just general, you know, otherwise it's just have to curate your search, it's your feed. So if I saw you through there, how important is it, I guess, for you in general, simply on the socials at all?
I think it was really important at the beginning of my art career. But thankfully, since I have started working with an agency, it's become a lot less mandatory and a lot more optional, you know. Yeah. There's just so much pressure on not just artists, but everybody who needs to market themselves to create so much content to be active on social media. And I think it's especially hard for artists because, you know, our art is our content, but art takes a long time to make.
Yeah.
So, you know, artists are trying to keep up with pages where people are able to post, you know, a selfie every single day, keep the algorithm happy, so to speak. And that's really, really hard for a lot of artists to do, and it leads to a lot of people getting burnt out. So I think that in a way, like, it was really fortunate that I put all of my effort into social media at the time that I did, because now I can kind of pull back. Now that I'm working with an agency, I really don't have to promote myself that much at all. I mostly use social media nowadays. Instagram, I just upload my art there, but on TikTok, for example, I put very little art. I'm just talking to artists, trying to tell them, like, hey, this is how you work in the industry. There is actually jobs here. Yeah. You never would have guessed it. People always say that there aren't, but there's lots of jobs. Here are, tips for freelancing. So I think, like a lot of things, it changes with time. Social media is always like a really great tool for artists, but I think it was a lot easier to keep up with when I was kind of like blowing. I didn't go like super viral or anything, but when I was building my followership, I honestly think it was easier. It was an easier time, and I think that artists got a lot more value out of using social media at that time. Whereas today, I think it is a lot harder, because even if you have one reel that does very well, it's like a flash in the pan, and that's not going to sustain you really. So yeah, that's my, I think it's more than 2 cents. That's like 5 cents.
No, I 100% agree. Like he does the TikTok, because I'm not that, I can't keep up with all that. But he's had some that like have gone viral, and then it's like, okay, well, how do we do another one? It's very hard to you got to keep feeding that monster, like you said. And like, I know we talked to another artist, we mentioned already, Kwanzaa, that she was like, she's had some, again, pieces have gone viral, but it's like, then you have to keep it up, and then you feel like you're not even being creative for yourself anymore, because you're having to maintain this thing. And so it absolutely can kind of stifle your creativity, especially if you're an artist that takes, if it really wants to put a lot of detail and takes a little bit longer to come up with a masterpiece. How long do you typically spend on a piece? Like, it's days, weeks, hours? What's your timeline usually?
My normal timeline is about 3 hours. I don't know how it always works out to the same amount of time, but the vast majority of my work takes about 3 hours. And I work digitally, so I can always go back and open the little information panel, and it'll tell me how long I worked on a piece. And that number has been the same for years now, which it always surprises me. It's like, I do everything differently now. How does it still take the exact same amount of time? But I don't know. Apparently it stays very, very consistent. So with most personal pieces, that's the timeline on it. With professional pieces, commercial pieces, it's a little bit different, because that's not me starting and finishing, at my own pace. It's always a collaboration between, me and the author's team. And, we're doing rounds of edits, and we're going back and forth. But when I sit down to start a piece and finish a piece, it usually takes me about 3 hours.
And how many pieces are you working on at a time? Like, I know you've got commercial jobs that you're doing, and then potentially personal ones. Like, how do you kind of balance that?
In terms of my commercial jobs, the amount that I'm doing at any time can really range from maybe 2 to maybe I maxed out at about 8 at the same time this year. But the thing is that sounds really, really intense, but it's not, because the timelines for everything, since I'm working in publishing, like traditional publishing, the timelines are really, really long. So it's not common for me to have like deadlines for 2 different projects on the same day, for example. They're always kind of split. And when I say the timelines are long, I mean, I'll have maybe like 4 months to work on a cover.
Yeah.
They're very long. And then even after I turn the cover in, normally they'll be like, okay, we'll let you know when you can post the cover. We're thinking you're going to publish this in 1.5 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. Please send me a reminder because I'm going to be a different person when this cover comes out.
By then you might be like, you're like, actually, I would have done that completely different in 1.5 years. Like, you know, like
that's actually a hard part sometimes is, for example, I'm working on a sequel to a book right now. And of course they want the cover to be in the same style as the first cover. And it's like, well, I drew like that a year ago, but my process is so different now, but I still have to kind of take it back and do that same style, even though, you know, my process, and normally I would say evolves for the better.
Yeah.
So when I'm going back to where I was a year ago, I'm like, ah, man, I really wish I could do it. I wish I could show you guys how I do it now. But of course, it's like, no, I just need to, you know, try to work to my current standards, but with my same process flow that I was using before. And then with personal work, most of the time, if I don't finish it in that first sitting, I'm never gonna finish it. So
Yeah.
it's either getting done in 3 hours or never getting done. That's usually how it goes for me.
Look, as a non-creative, my equivalent is if I don't answer that email as soon as I see it, it'll be months, if ever, before it gets responded.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a somewhat understanding of that.
Yeah. I'm always working on projects for either freelancing for other, you know, clients or just jobs and stuff like that. And similar to the process, you know, you have to try to like really force something to get leaked there to either make yourself a deadline or your personal log is like, yeah, I'll work on it and like, I'll finish it, I finish it. When I get to it, basically.
I was I'm thinking about like the pressure of like being doing a cover. Like I'm thinking like if that book turns into like a movie or something, then everybody's comparing that character doesn't look like the book Tyler. That doesn't look like it. I'm thinking in my head for years when I read it. And so it's like kind of cool. You're the source.
Yeah. But it is kind of cool in that aspect. Like, it's also kind of beautiful because sometimes I will be speaking directly to the authors, and they'll give me a loose description, and I will draw like a loose person based off of that description. But like obviously I don't know who they're seeing in their minds, but then they'll see it and they'll be like, "This is it. You captured her perfectly. That's exactly who she is." And I'm just like, excellent. Yeah. I'm happy that this worked out because I really had drawn hundreds of different people based off of that description. I'm happy that this happened to be the right one.
So cool.
Yeah, it is really, really cool. I mean, one of the projects I worked on, it was even like, it's not an autobiography, but it was a woman recounting like her childhood growing up in South Alabama. And the cover is like a drawing of a young girl. And I kind of drew a random one. I don't know what she looked like. Right. But then she got the cover and she's like, "That's me. The 3 plaits, the curve of my neck." And I'm like, whoa, this is intense. I can't believe it. I mean, you're talking like I just time traveled. That's not a photo of you. So those moments, it's like, whoa, I mean, I guess they're really doing their work, really describing the characters to a T, because it's like, I'm just going down a checklist, like, okay, 3 plaits, check. Brown eyes, check. You know, and then it comes out and they're like, perfect. I was like, wow. I mean, good on you. I think that was mostly from the description, because I am just, again, like when I create my own art, I don't know who those people are.
Yeah.
I'm just loosely drawing the features. And so I'm just always like amazed, honestly, when the author comes back and they're like, you did it perfectly. It's like, like the little wipe my sweat off moment, because you never know. And then when it does, it's just so satisfying.
Well, that's good on you too. I mean, you are, taking what you reading or hearing and being able to retrade it in a way that they feel like represents them. So, I mean, that's impressive.
I think like the fact that you said you like enjoy reading before, that helps too. Like you already have that mental like ability to create your own image in your head. Like some people like don't read a lot, or if you're reading like maybe more like practical books instead of like storybooks or something like that, then you don't actually have that ability to create something.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that you have like kind of that kind of background of already enjoying, books, and then being an artist yourself, so you can build this world.
Yeah. It's also really pleasant, to be someone who enjoys reading recreationally. And then part of the job is like, I just get sent books all the time.
Yeah.
The only downfall is, of course, the timelines are so long. So sometimes I'll read a good one and I'll tell my friends like, oh, this book was so good. I can't wait for you to read it.
Yeah. You're getting like the really like like a big thing of like the Dead Wears Prada when she's like, I got you the unpublished manuscript of the Harry Potter, newest Harry Potter. Like you get like a really, really early stuff that's super cool, like all that access.
Yeah.
But have you ever read one that you were like, I can't draw for this because this is a terrible book?
I haven't had one that I couldn't draw for, but I did have like back-to-back one where I listened to it. I was like, this is so good. This is my favorite book right now. I got to tell everybody this is so good, and to get it whenever it comes out. And then right after that, I listened to one and I was like, okay, this was not so great. I guess it's not all amazing books. But I think part of it is also that sometimes I draw for different age levels. So I don't want to make it sound like the second one was just awful. I think it was just for like a lower age level. And I'm 27. And so the book that appeals to an 8-year-old might not be the same kind of book that appeals to me. I was still able to draw for it, because thankfully that one needed pretty straightforward drawings. But I'm trying to think if that's ever a thing, if I ever feel like I can't draw from the source material. I think that even the books that I don't enjoy as much, I'm still able to draw from them. Like I can still see what I imagine the setting where the main character looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also helps that like I am getting really early access to the books, yes, but I also am working in like traditional publishing, and so these are books that have been picked up by like the big publishing houses. And by the time they get to that stage, even if it is like full of typos, there's somebody who believes and they're willing to convince somebody at their publishing house to put down the money to print out like 500,000 copies of this book. So it's got to be at least to a certain degree of quality. And I think that helps a lot, because I haven't had one where I just felt like I couldn't imagine the characters or imagine the settings based off of how it was written.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Have any of your books become movies yet? Has that happened for you yet?
Actually, we're in September now. So this is the month when the first book cover that I did in March of 2021.
Oh.
Is that book supposed to come out this month?
Okay, so you got a little time, but that's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
That's still really cool. Well, you know, I know bookstores are not as common anymore, but like it's cool to even be able to go and see, you know, lots of books that are, you know, on the shelves that with your piece. That's super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hoping, you know, maybe this time next year I'll be able to go in and just be like, me, I did that. That would have been there too.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
What section of Priz is your book, right?
It's gonna be. It might be interesting because you were saying like when you were younger and you're reading children's books, you noticed that the art was similar. And with me doing a lot of covers in the same genre, you know, I wonder if people will be able to look at one book cover and be like, hey, that one looks similar to this other very different book cover.
Yeah.
Maybe goes side by side between them. I guess I'll have to like wait another year and a half and see if people are able to put those, you know, threads together.
Super cool. Well, hopefully, you know, with your puzzle coming out, you know, you'll be able to see that in stores as well. We do have a couple of retailers, or smaller retailers. Actually, we are in a store in Houston. Hopefully you'll be able to see one of those in stores as well.
Your puzzle coming out soon, and will be out by the time this is released. So, with your puzzle being out now, what kind of music you listen to when you're building your art?
It's going to depend on the day. Sometimes, you know, I'm going ham with the classical music, and then other times, like when Renaissance dropped, I completed 3 separate deadlines before 12 p.m. that day because it was just running up. Let's go.
Wow.
So you're gonna have the whole playlist. Renaissance, cool.
Yeah,
That's pretty Renaissance. So like this round of playlisting will have to include Beyonce. But yeah, that's funny. Well,
but yeah, asked to like.
I was gonna say we have classical. Are you like violin, piano, like or anything specific?
I like a lot of orchestra music. When I was in middle school, I was in the orchestra. I was very bad, but I just did it.
Same.
And so I kind of, you know, like to go back and listen to a lot of the pieces that, you know, we played, or I heard the better orchestra that my school playing, like the chamber students would play that. I'd be like, wow, they're killing it on stage. I wish I knew how to tune my cello. But I like to listen to that as well. And I think it's a little bit easier for me to like visualize completely original things when I'm listening to music that, you know, doesn't have lyrics already telling its own story. So I think orchestra music, for me at least, is really, really good for that because I can listen to it and it's like called something wild, like, I don't know, Night on Bald Mountain, but I'm not thinking of like a bald mountain. I'm thinking of some guy getting chased. Just
Yeah.
So I really like listening, I think, to a lot of orchestra music when I'm trying to come up with fresh ideas. But then when I'm actually working, it's got to be something like upbeat, going, because that'll just help me zoom through a piece. I love that I can like put an album on, and by the time it's done, I'm just knocked out like the hour and a half drawing work.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting. So you actually listen to a full album. You're not like necessarily playlisting it all over the place.
Yeah, when I make my playlists on Spotify, like they're never one by, you know, they're not consistent. They're not, all my playlists are like June the 3rd, and then just songs that I've been listening to, random, back to back. We're going from Beyonce straight into Hatsune Miku, like no tailoring at all. But I do, when I'm listening to albums for the first time, especially, you know, I'll listen to it beginning to end. And then after that point, I can listen to like any track kind of off on its own. But I think the first like 3 to 5 listens, I have to listen to it in order so I can you know, get the full experience. And then the songs that I still think about afterwards, those are the ones where I'll like pull those ones and listen to them on their own.
Well, that's definitely got to be like the storybook person in you, because like, you know, these artists, they design it as a story. It is supposed to be a journey. It's supposed to be, you know, like Beyonce and Adele were both saying like that they don't want their albums to be shuffleable, because like I wrote it in this order, where it's placed in this order for a reason. So yeah, so I'm sure that they'd be very happy to hear that.
At least the beginning. I'll go down 3 playthroughs, 5 playthroughs, the way they want, and then it's just whatever the Spotify says is on repeat. I believe that.
Yeah.
I'm probably the same way when I listen to music. I like to listen to the full album, and you know, of course, you find your favorite songs, you go back to those and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, well, because in general, like when you are creating, if you don't, do you do music? Is there any other kind of things that inspire you that helps kind of get the juices flowing?
I would definitely say like I'm inspired by a big range of visual things. So it's not like I can just like look at one thing and be like, okay, refill my inspiration juice. So much as it's like a lot of little things, little moments that I'll always like want to come back to. Even in nature, I don't draw like a ton of actual nature. Like I'll draw a few little plants, but I'm not gonna draw, I don't know, a landscape. But I'll see like little moments in nature where it's like, I really like the color of this kind of tree. Like I'm gonna work with that at some point in the future. Even with harvest, that one isn't exactly from nature, but when I was younger, I watched this movie called The House of Flying Daggers, and there's a scene where they're in like some kind of dry grass flower field. And from then on, like that was just so visually striking to me that I was like, well, I think I really like wheat. Like, there's something about the way that looks so much cooler than grass. Like, I like all that brown stuff out there. And so, like, obviously for harvest, it's about me looking at that movie and then being like, I want her in that same setting, so much as it's a long-standing thing that's just in my mind from that point on. Like, hey, I like long, dry grass. Let me scatter that into some drawings every now and then. So there's a lot of that, of just staying kind of one moment in a lot of the times in media, especially where it's like that looks really, really striking to me, and then it's kind of just stored. And it's like, will I use this anytime this year? Maybe not, but maybe in like 5 years, I'll be like, oh, I really like when there's a little drop of water on a leaf, you know? Yeah. Bud's life really made that look so appetizing, living on a little drop of water on a leaf. He didn't know.
Like, why, about a day. Deep cut.
So for me, it's stuff like that. It's like, I definitely do pull a lot of inspiration from other media, but almost never from the piece as a whole. It's just one thing that I'll see that's very visually striking to me, and I'll just kind of put it in the mental Rolodex. Like, I liked that. At some point, that's going to get used.
I think I'm the same way when I do design. It's just very much like I like to draw inspiration from other things, other creative things I see. You know, of course, you use big hands for like resources and stuff, but in general, like even things like I see, you know, like a billboard, a pattern I see somewhere, I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I wonder how that would work on this flyer design I'm working on, or on this, you know, box design, things of that nature. They like to just art for anything and everything around you.
Yeah, definitely. And then mostly just like being able to mentally save it for later. I think that's kind of, for me at least, what kind of distinguishes the things that are truly inspiring for me. Because I'm not actively thinking, like, remember this, remember the week. But some of these simple things, it'll be just like 1 second in media, but it'll just stick with me. It'll stick for so long. And I think that those kinds of things are really where it's like the true hard-hitting inspiration. It's like the stuff that I saw for a moment and that I just couldn't forget if I tried.
So tell us, what is next for you as a brand? What do you have coming out that you've illustrated? What else do you have?
I could say a couple of them because the covers have been out. We'll know Rain Rising by Courtney Convery. That one's coming out this month. I might have set myself up for failure because I don't remember all the author names. Okay, we'll just go with the one this month. This month, there'll be a book called Rain Rising by Courtney Convery. That one is releasing, and I'm really excited for it. In the past year, I kind of made it a goal for me to illustrate covers for at least 10 novels, and I've met that goal. So
congratulations.
They're going to be coming out. They're going to be on a little timeline, maybe once every 2 months. Check it and see if another one's come out. I'm working on a children's book, which has definitely been the biggest illustration undertaking, that I've taken on in my career. It's a lot of work. But yeah, that's where things are moving career-wise for me right now. And then apart from that, I like to spend a lot of time building up my social media so that I can teach other artists, ways to get into the illustration industry. I think that it's really important that somebody from the inside communicates these things, because even with me, with a background of having gone to art school, I didn't know that this was possible. I didn't know illustration agencies existed until one reached out to me. So right now, I really like building up a platform just to help other artists get into the industry and build careers for themselves as well. So those are my main things I've got going on.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you were full-time with book, art, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, we always have the conversation of like, what was your education? And so I can't believe you didn't until you just mentioned it. I'm like, oh, art school. Yeah. Where did you go to school, just out of curiosity?
I went to UT, so I wasn't in art school like that was the only thing. I was at a state university, but then I was in the art school at that university, which I think I liked, because I really enjoyed all of my non-art related classes as well. So that kind of worked out for me. I also was a teacher for 4 years before I started doing freelance art full-time. So I was getting my art degree with a teaching minor so that I would be able to go straight into teaching afterwards.
And did you teach art, or you taught just like a different subject?
I taught elementary art. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Get to mold these young minds. It's the creatives.
Yes, definitely a lot of molding was taking place. Oh, well, I don't know. I think that sounded a lot harsher than it was, or something. No. Kids, it's amazing. If you start teaching them young, I have a very draftsmanship based art style. I'm very much like, if you practice drawing in circles, you will get better at drawing the circles. In practically shading the circles, you will get better at shading the circles. I've never really excelled at abstract art. And normally in the elementary art sphere, people expect a lot of abstract art. But I was going in there good morning, 8-year-olds. You are going to do a still life. Let's go. Let's shade this thing. And it was amazing because they were totally learning it. So very, very cool. It was definitely rewarding work. And then when I was making my transition to freelancing, it was really cool to be able to like show them, hey, like these are projects that I'm working on. I'm a working artist. And they were, I don't know, really excited to see that kind of stuff too. So yeah, Tennis Head would recommend to people who do enjoy teaching and do not dislike children. I think those are really, really big things to emphasize because like,
For sure.
some people will jump in without checking on those two core things. No, but if you tick off those boxes, teaching is really, really fun and rewarding as well.
Well, tell us, where can people find you if they want to follow you? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like, how do they do that?
Seen you on Twitch too.
Yes. So if you want to see more of my art, definitely Instagram at ukulele. If you're an artist and you are looking for tips on breaking into the industry and just kind of information about freelancing as a full-time career, I would advise you to go to my TikTok because that's my bread and butter there. And then lastly, if you just want to vibe sometimes and watch art being made real time, twitch.tv/ukulele. Every now and then I get on and I'll start the session, with the blank canvas, and by the end of it, should hopefully have a piece all the way done.
Awesome. Sounds like fun. Let's check that out. Thank you so much for all of your time and great information. We love hearing about the illustration world. It's something that we haven't gotten to get a lot of information on. So thank you so much for sharing, and for absolutely, of course, Harvest for that piece. It's absolutely beautiful and a puzzle that I'm sure lots of people will look forward to putting together.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the pieces when people start, when they start tagging you guys. I'm just going to be stalking your page. Tell all the pictures. Like, Grandma Lily.
We're always going to tag the artist, so we'll see it. We'll let you know.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. This has been great.
You can also listen to a curated playlist of music to pair with this artist puzzle on Spotify.